Ready? Okay. Nick from Rubicon, and you could probably call our office at area code 818-765-8800 when you have questions about this video, or you want to sue me and get me in trouble with the IRS and who knows what. Okay? So the first thing I want to get to today is we talked about this, and it's so important because this is where we go wrong in life. It's how do we learn? Like when you go to school, how do you learn? What makes you learn something? Or why do you even remember it? This is very important. The things I'm handing out is the first thing you do when you're learning is you got to listen. The more you talk, the less you're going to learn. And there's that wonderful saying in Zen Buddhism, those who know do not speak, and those who speak do not know. And this is true. Okay, I'm speaking now, but the rest of the week I got nothing to say. Okay, so you got to listen. And then you got to write things down. And this is the big thing with the universities. They taught us to take notes while the professor is lecturing. So, you all sit at a desk and you write things down. Last week we went over, when you write it down, it's much more impacting than when you do it on an iPod or on a computer. It's a completely different experience. And you remember and you learn it better when you write it with your hand and a pen or a pencil. So you take notes, even if you're scribbling on paper or you're writing in your appointment book. But when you put it on the iPod, it doesn't work as well. Okay? The person doesn't remember as well. Okay? Now the next thing you've got to do, you have to role play. So with new agents in the old days, and this still works, you could pretend to be the buyer, Nicole is the seller, Andy is the listing agent, Fred is the selling agent. Hello, Jose? Fred is the selling agent, and you role play, and you practice. I'm selling my house, and I'm selling it too cheap. The buyer is buying, and the buyer always feels I'm paying too much. So you have the seller is selling too low, the buyer is buying too high, everybody's fighting. It's always like that. And the broker puts it together. This is the great argument against selling your own listing. Because when you represent the buyer and the seller, you cannot be impartial. Oh, thank you. Okay? So here you go. You listen, you write things down, and then you role play. You practice with somebody. And this will work. Okay? Now let's see what else is here. You'll find that a lot of these things I'm giving will agree with other things I'm giving. Because the truths are fundamental. Okay? Here, you've got to daydream. You've got to imagine yourself as being healthy, successful, whatever it is you want. You act as if it already happened. As if you already succeeded. You act that way. And then you will move in that direction. If you act depressed and you're losing and everything is bad, believe me, it's going to get worse. It's not going to make anything better. Okay? When you act as if it already happened, you will get into the feeling of it. Okay? You will get into the feeling of success. If you want to be a farmer, you get into the feeling, what is it like to be a farmer? And you have horses and all this other stuff going on. You've got to keep the goal in front of you. You've got to focus on, like, what do you want to do? Nicole is great to work with because at night we sit down and say, well, what are we going to do tomorrow? And we plan. Those are short-term goals, but they're still goals, right? It's still something you want to do. Okay, and then we talked last week, if you're going to fall asleep thinking about something positive. Something you want, or something is going to happen. If you just bought a new home, especially for buyers or sellers. If you just bought a new home, think about what it's going to be like, all the good things that are going to happen by having that, and all the problems you're going to have, which you will solve. Okay? That is your sleep programming. You never get a second chance to make a first impression. And how do we learn and everything? All of this is related to the presentation, which is a little something we're going to talk about in our next step. But for right now, I think this is a good time to end our video, because the next thing we're going to talk about, which will be the second video, will be the presentation, which is the key to everything. Okay, Nicole, that's it?
That's
okay,
it.
I'm